one does not simply fly across the Atlantic Ocean to meet up with their friend and not dress up like hobbits and frolic in a field. So this video is in collaboration with Sophie, Madame Myriad. I know we did one not that long ago, but I'm going to her homeland. So we're gonna meet up and we're gonna frolic in a field as hobbit. How exciting. We've been planning this for quite a few months, so I'm very excited. Oh, and real quick, let me just introduce myself because I've gotten a lot of new subscribers lately. Hi, my name's Annie. I make things. Sometimes they're silly, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just clothes. Sometimes I make props. I'm getting more into cosplay, so that's me. This video, we're gonna look at Hobbit costumes and then we're gonna make one. There's some caveats to my Hobbit costume. Because I'm flying across the Atlantic Ocean, I only have so much bag space, so I can't go crazy. So we need to make a costume that's travel friendly. And another caveat I would like to make for this video is that I'm not gonna use my blocks. I'm gonna use patterns and I'm gonna show the process of like fitting a bodice, I guess. That sounded like a question, mostly because I just made that up right now, but it sounded like a good idea, so we're gonna go with it. Let's get into it. Let's start off by looking at the Lord of the Rings movies, because those came out first, even though The Hobbit takes place before The Lord of the Rings. Let's look a little bit closer at men's fashion first. Starting with shirts, they're usually button-ups. The colors can vary. There's usually a bit of volume in these shirts, slight gathering at the shoulders. They're usually long sleeve, but sometimes they're rolled up. These shirts vary from just white to plaid. A few of the men have some decorative smocking on the yoke, which I think is very cool. They usually wear suspenders, and vests are very popular. Duh. Men are usually wearing a combination or at least one of the following: a vest, suspenders, and or a jacket. And a lot of men also like to wear either a kerchief or like ascot around their neck. The pants are a little bit harder to tell for everybody, but it looks like they have that kind of sailor pant thing where it has the two rows of buttons right here. So there's this like square flap, which is also a very 18th century design. Moving along to the women's costumes, the women wear more of kind of a uniform almost. They're all very similar. We have the skirts, and a lot of women wear aprons over their skirts. The majority of women have on a peasant type blouse where it's gathered around the neckline. There's a bit of like poofy sleeve, and then there's like a bit of like ruffle like kind of at the bottom of the poof. And then they wear a bodice over that, which always laces in the back and has a center panel that is different from the rest of the bodice. So I'll refer to this part as the blouse and this, like the over part, as the bodice. And a few of the women wear a like whole, there's a circle cut out at the top of the bodice, like Rosie. Now that we've talked about the general, like the kind of rules of their wardrobe, let's talk about the outliers, like this man who doesn't have on suspenders or a vest or a coat. The only man in the movie, just rocking in a shirt. And then there's this man who doesn't have a button-up shirt. He has just like a piratey shirt. And then there's these women right here. The one on the right seems to be wearing a men's shirt, just based off of the way the sleeves are sitting and how there's no kind of like gathered part, and the yoke all make it seem like it's a men's shirt. And she also doesn't have on a bodice. The woman on the left also doesn't have on a bodice, and she has on what I think is an apron. Now let's move along to the Hobbit movies. There's more variation in the costumes, and they're pretty much straight up 18th century costumes. I mean, look at this dress. That is just an 18th century dress. Most of them seem to be wearing a bodice that has a front closure, and the sleeves usually go to like 3/4 or half sleeve, and they're more form-fitting, not floofy. They're also cut like 18th century garments. And then there's this one woman who is wearing a bodice with attached sleeves, but the sleeves only seem to be attached at one point, like right here at the shoulder. They're kind of interesting. I think there's like two women wearing a bodice like that. Women are also wearing bum pads, which is very obvious. Look at this. That's not her natural butt. Butts don't look like that. The men's fashion hasn't drastically changed. It's still quite similar. I don't think I ever saw somebody without a vest on, though. So I don't know if they were also wearing suspenders. And then there's the neck kerchief or the ascot. And then I just wanted to give a little highlight to this patchwork vest, just because it's pretty cute. I like it. Oh, and the men's jackets are also cut in an 18th century fashion. And it seems like everybody kind of has more of a personality with their clothes in The Hobbit. I would also like to point out, because I forgot to mention her earlier, is this woman from the Fellowship of the Ring. She's the only person wearing something like this. Nobody else is wearing anything like this. So I like to think that it is like her mother's bodice or something that she has just had and kept. Anyways, I think it's cute. So now that we know and have had a good look at all the costumes from both sets of movies, what can we take away from this? My takeaway is that, like most historical garments, as long as you get the silhouette right, you can get away with a lot. So let's look at incandescent Kiki really quick. She doesn't follow the rules that have been set in The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings movie, but all of these costumes read as Hobbit. And the fabric that you make the garments out of also plays a big role in how it comes off. If I made the same skirt out of something like this, it wouldn't give the same vibe, right? Another fabric that we see a lot in the costumes is velvet and corduroy. Gotten that all out of the way, let's check out what I am gonna make today. So the bodice is gonna be made out of that fabric I just showed you, the cute little pink. And then I wanna add some type of decoration right here. I'm gonna make a pirate shirt because I really want a pirate shirt and you can't stop me. That's going under the bodice. And then we're gonna make a skirt, probably. But let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and start making something. I don't know what we're gonna make yet, but let's both find out together, shall we?
2 hours later.
Looks like we're doing the bodice first. It's the same day. I just got done filming the reveal for the last video. I had to film the intro for this one first because my hair was in ringlets, and then I needed to brush it out to film the reveal for my last video, The Life of a Content Creator, ABF. Always be filming. Anyways, so I decided to go with this Butterwick pattern 4669. I'm sure this will look very familiar to a lot of you. We know this pattern. And I figured it would be easy enough to get since it's Butterwick, and some of you probably have it. So here we go. We're going with A. I have already traced the pattern out. You want to start by ironing your pattern. Yes, that's a thing. Just turn the steam off and turn it on kind of low and iron it. Make it flat and straight so it's not all crinkled up, because sometimes you get some weird stuff happening. Is it necessary to trace out your pattern? No, but it is good form. If you cut out the paper pattern and then you make alterations to the paper pattern and maybe you mess it up at some point, well, then you've ruined your pattern and now you have to buy a new one. So just trace it. I've gone ahead and done one alteration to this already. Since I have been making my own clothes for a few years now, I know a little bit about my body. And I know that I'm long-waisted. So I've gone ahead and added an inch into the waist in all 3 pieces. There's 4 pieces technically for the A bodice, but the 4th piece is just bias tape. And we don't need to trace that. We don't need to cut that. I'll show you how to make bias tape. It's very, very easy, but you don't need a pattern for it. So let me just fold that back up. I cut out size 16 because my bust is 38 and my waist is 32, 32, 30 to 32, depending on what time of the month it is, and we fluctuate. Okay, so I'm gonna follow the instructions up into a certain point because they do the back weird and I don't like it. So I'm not gonna do that, but it's easy enough. This is the fabric I am going to make it out of. The first thing you want to do is make a mock-up though, especially with something like stays, because there's a good chance it's just not going to fit you right off the bat. There's also no boning in this pattern, but we're gonna add a little bit of boning. You don't have to, totally optional, but we're gonna add a little bit. The pattern wants you to have 3 layers, your outside fabric, an interfacing layer, and the lining. I'm gonna go with 2 layers because this fabric that I'm gonna use for the lining is very tightly woven, so I don't really need the interfacing part. These are both cotton, so they're nice and breathable. I'm gonna go ahead and cut my lining out and use it as my mock-up, so that way if it fits, I don't have to do anything else. I want to cut it out again or sew it again. I'm lazy. I'm a lazy sewer. So I will take shortcuts when I can. And I also have quite a bit of this. So if it doesn't fit and I do need to make some more alterations, then I can just cut it out again. No big deal. Let's get it cut out and do our first fitting. We have our first mock-up. Not terrible. It's long enough. I like the low neckline and I like how it's kind of like scooped. The armpit needs to be taken down. The pieces in the arm didn't line up, and so there's this like point that was left. I don't know. So I kind of need to just like trim that off and then bring the armpit down a little bit because it's just too high. I don't like things digging into my armpit. It's also a little big, so I can make these touch, and I want a little bit of a gap. I might cut like an inch off of both sides. And then the back, I hate the back. I hate the back. I hate that it goes all the way up this high, and it also is like, it gapes at the top right here. See that nonsense? The back needs some fixing. Oh, and just a little tip. When you have curves like this in your neckline or like in your waist, you want to go ahead and add just a little stitching in the seam allowance, just a line of stitching, and that will help it from getting stretched out because this part right here is on the bias, and the bias is stretchy, and it is very easy to stretch out your fabric. I've done it too many times. So just add a little tiny row of stitching right there, and it'll keep it intact. Let me kind of mark where I want the back of the neckline to be. I think that made a line. Let's get out our pattern pieces again and make those alterations. Sorry, I didn't mean to clap. Make those alterations that I just mentioned.
The first adjustment I make is taking 1/2 inch from the side seam, but only from the front piece, and then another 1/2 inch from the center front. That's a total subtraction of 2 inches. Next is lowering the underarm. This one is fairly simple. I just curve out a chunk. After that is the back. I transfer the mark I made from the mock-up to the paper pattern and then use the neckline from the front piece. I really liked the scoop look and thought it would look nice in the back too. Since I made that adjustment, I was worried about it gaping at the lower shoulder area, so I make a small hinge and overlap it about 1/4 inch. Let's see how that fits.
This is looking better. I think it's still a little big. The top, when I pull it, I can make it touch, but the bottom doesn't. We need to take in the top at an angle and leave the bottom, but we still need to take like another at least 1/2 inch from both sides and then taper it down like that. The back, I like this much better. The shoulders are a little big, and then also I kind of don't like the way it goes like really wide right here and then gets back down. Take my pen and fix that. I need to pull up the inside of the shoulder a little bit. Okay, and then right here, we have some gaping. So we're gonna pinch that, pin it. Okay, getting closer. This is super annoying to keep going through this, but it is worth it in the end to have a really well-fitting garment. This is the same lining that I cut the first time. I've just made alterations to it because all the alterations that I've made so far are taking things away from the pre-existing garment, so I don't have to make a new one. I just need to unpick some seams. Make these adjustments, and I'll re-sew it together and try it on one more time, but it should be good this time. We should be good. Let's fix this.
Using the mock-up as reference, I marked the spots I put pins in and then cut it off the pattern. I need to take a little more from the center front, but only to the top, so I grade that down. Then for the princess seams, I use the mock-up again to mark the amount I want to take away. I don't do this properly, and the fit gets a little wonky. Let me show you what I mean.
I have gone too far. So this is sitting weird. So I'm gonna go back and add that chunk that I took out because it was a big chunk. So I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna have to recut the front and the side piece. But the shoulders fit now. I think the front is good, except for this. But yeah, I think it's good. So I'm just gonna add in that gonna fix the front, add those chunks back and recut the front and side pieces. And then I'm gonna start cutting out the real thing. But I'm kind of done. I'm over it. I hate making mock-ups. Let's cut out and start sewing up the real thing.
After fixing the lining layer, I want to go ahead and add the boning channels. There are lots of ways you can do this, but I use ribbon because it's what I had on hand. I didn't have a chart or anything for placement. This is done based off of previous corsets and stays that I've made and vibes. I used tape to hold the ribbons in place. I'm sure I had a good reason for doing this at the time, but I don't remember what it was now.
I haven't cut out the outside fabric yet, but the things I've done to this one, the lining, I've taken all the seams and I have pressed them to one side and then sewn them down, which reinforces the seam versus just pressing it open and then it's a little bit weaker. So now there's 2 rows of stitchings per seam. I've gone through and added the boning channels. I'm using this boning that I got from Wall Walk. I can leave it in the description. I've never used this type of boning before. It's very, very flexible. I think it's nice. I've always used zip ties and then this other type of boning. Anyways, I like this. So now we have the bonings in, and I just put them in to see how they fit. I need to trim them down now. And with this being 3 pieces, but like 5 pieces, it's terribly easy to sew together. The only part that can be somewhat challenging is this front seam right here because it's a princess seam, but just use a lot of pins and go really slow and make sure you're kind of like straightening out the fabric underneath because it'll get kind of bunched sometimes. And here, I'll show you right here. So it can get kind of bunched and then you can get folds. But this is the lining and I didn't care that much to fix it, so I just left it. But if it does happen, you can just seam rip that one little spot and then re-sew it. No big deal. Moving along, let's trim these bones and put the lining and the front of it together, shall we?
Now that everything's sewn together, it's time to make it look pretty. I basically get out every bit of trim and lace I have that might look good and start playing around with them, changing their placement and switching them about until I find a design that I like. I sew them down in sections to make sure everything is in its right place and held on tight.
Look how stinking cute these are. It's adorable. I would be an adorable hobbit. I need to add the grommets and I need to add the binding, but I wanted to I mentioned this in, 2 videos ago when I made the stays for my belle dress, about these little like crescent moons that you would put under your boobies to help the boobies stay up. Because I know any of you that have any amount of boobage, when you're wearing stays or like corsets, they tend to like get smushed down. Even if you pick them up, they're just like, meh. So we are gonna fix that. I'm gonna fix it in these. I'm gonna take my pen and draw where like my under boobage is. Kind of done a rough little shape of my under boobs. And I'm gonna transfer this to paper and make a little crescent moon pattern shape, sew that together and stuff it. Little crescent moon. And then we're just gonna stitch it down right here where we put our little mark. Just like this. I don't really know if this will work, but I mean, theoretically, it seems like it should. Okay, we need to bind and grommet this thing. Which one do I do first? Maybe bind it. Yeah, let's bind it.
I just cut strips at a 45-degree angle. I have a quilting ruler that I use for this. And also most cutting boards have the 45-degree mark on it too. The reason you want to cut it at an angle, because fabric cut on the bias has more give. So you're able to shape it around curves much easier, which is what I'm doing right now. With the front and the lining pinned together, I attach the bias tape around all the raw edges, bottom, neckline, front center, and armholes. Sew them on right sides together. After it's all sewn, I trim the seam allowance down to about 1/4 inch.
She kind of looks like a strawberry and I'm not mad. These are very cute. To finish the binding, you can do it either by folding the inside over and then stitching on the ditch from the inside, making sure you catch that folded in seam, or you can hand stitch it down. I kind of just want to hand stitch, mostly because I'm tired of working in the studio today and I just want to go downstairs and lay on the couch And hand stitching is a couch activity. So last thing I gotta do is add the grommets, but this is basically done. So now we're gonna start working on either the skirt or the shirt. You know, one of the two things we need to do. I'm very excited about the shirt, so maybe I will do that last because I feel like the skirt is gonna be really easy. It is just a rectangle and a waistband. I don't know, we'll figure it out tomorrow. Okay, let's make the easiest skirt you've ever seen. I have here 3 yards of fabric. I could not decide between this kind of lighter tan or this kind of chocolatey brown. So I put a poll up on Instagram and like 80% of people said the brown. So that's what we're going with. I'm just gonna go end to end, but it's too long. So I need to cut it down to size. So I'm gonna take my measuring tape and just gonna do this. See where it sits? Okay, I want it to sit about here, which is like 33 inches. So I'm gonna add like 4. We're just gonna make it an even 40. Just because I need room for the hem. I need seam allowance at the top. And then I also have an idea for a bum pad. So if I want that, then I need a little extra in the back as well. So let's go ahead and cut this in half. I can make it 2 pieces. Oh, this is linen, by the way. It's like a really soft linen. So now that we have a front and a back, I want pockets. So the way this skirt is constructed is that it's gonna be like a historical skirt where you tie it in the front and then you tie it in the back. Now, I have another skirt that's similar and it has historical pockets attached to the skirt. I like the pockets attached to the skirt. I don't like historical pockets. I just don't. They're kind of hard to like get in and out of because of the little like slit. So I want to make more modern-esque pockets, but still have them attached to the waistband, like the back of the waistband. First thing I need to do is cut the fabric to length, and then we need to do some like gathering. I want to gather it in the front and then cartridge pleat in the back. I like the way cartridge pleats look, but they're a little thick to do on the front. So that's why we're only doing it on the back. Right, let's go.
Changing the stitch length on my sewing machine to the longest setting, I sew 2 rows of stitches parallel to the top. Then pull the bobbin thread, this is important, the bobbin thread, to the size of the waistband, which in this case is just a rectangle half the size of my waist, folded in half, hot dog style, with twill tape at both ends. For the back of the skirt, I use my ruler to make 2 rows of dots 1/2 inch apart. You can make these smaller or longer, it just depends on how deep you want your pleats to be. And you can also make the pleats longer by adding more rows. The bonus here is that you don't have to do any pleat math. Now you take some sturdy thread and run it through both rows. You want the 2 rows to go in and out of the fabric at the same point. Then line it up with your waistband and pull the thread to fold the fabric like an accordion. There are more steps you can do after this to make them look nicer, but I regrettably skipped these steps, so my skirt's a little on the messy side, but eh.
So it's just pinned and I haven't sewn the sides yet, but I wanted to make sure the pockets and everything was gonna work, and I think it is. I just need to sew up the side seams to the bottom of the pocket right there, and then leave this open, which will definitely give me enough room to put it over my hips. And then since I've put this little like placket here, you won't be able to see the pocket. Huh? That's that. The other thing is that I'm using twill tape to tie the skirt on. And I don't really want to see this. Okay, I don't want this on the outside of my skirt, so I got a plan. Okay? Plan is to redo the front waistband, make it 1 inch longer on both sides. When I fold the waistband, I will sew the inch on either side closed and the same width as the twill tape. So like 1/2 inch. And then I'm gonna put buttonholes around here in the back part of the waistband. And then that way I can feed the front skirt tie through those buttonholes, and then I'll be able to like lift the back of my skirt up and tie it back there. Yeah, I think that'll work. I made this way too long. It's all the way at my ankles. I wanted it to be a little bit longer, but oh boy. Maybe I'll give it 2 inches on either side just for a fair amount of leeway. I'm gonna finish up the skirt and then I can show you my tie situation and see if I've done it right.
It's a quick clip of me being sad because my last working brain cell has failed me, and I sewed my waistband into itself like an Aurora Boreas.
She's mostly done. Let's try her on. The skirt is too thick to go through my machine to sew a buttonhole in this little spot that I have. I just cut a little hole, and then I'm gonna go back through and hand stitch buttonholes. About to throw a fit. I just wanted to see if this worked. In the back, it's working. Huh? And now, if there was twill tape on both sides, I could tie it, and then it would be under the skirt. So the sides, they're there. Go straight into my pocket. It works. We have a skirt after I fix a couple little minor things. The next thing, I want to make a bum pad. I have one. This is my 18th century bum pad. It looks like I have stolen the stuffing out of it. I just ripped it open. Why am I like this? But anyways, this one has a stitching here and here, which isn't gonna work for the idea that I have. I wanna make like a crescent moon shape and leave a portion of the bottom open so that when I pack it, I can pack it flat. But when I get over there, I can roll up some of my clothes and stuff my clothes in it. Huh? Smart? And then that way I don't have like a big bulky thing. I'm tired now. But I can't hem the skirt until I make said bum pad and then stuff it with some, I don't know, fabric or whatever, just stuff it and then put it on. I need it to be on before I do the hem, because if I don't, then the hem in the back will be shorter than the front. I will see you guys tomorrow when we make our shirt. I'm still excited about it. See you tomorrow. Quick update on everything I've done so far. Here is my bum pad. I started with this one, but as I was trying to stuff it, I just realized that like this was too small and it wasn't gonna work. So I'm gonna need a bigger one. And there's currently 3 t-shirts in here. Well, 1 big like sleep shirt and then 2 crop top t-shirts. It was not easy to get them in here. This is a great temporary solution. Like if you're traveling and you're flying and you don't have that much space, this is a good solution, but it is a bit heavy, but it'll work. The skirt is totally done, and since it was too long, instead of just hemming it up, I hemmed it and then added these 3 tucks just to make it a little bit more interesting, which I think is very cute. The stays are also completely done. A couple of things I want to show you. After I put the grommets in, I didn't like how the metal looked, so I went ahead and covered the eyelets with thread with embroidery floss, and then I also added this, which is some antique handmade lace that I had. I dyed it pink, and I love this. I think it's so, so cute. Also added the little booby cups. My advice for these is to just make a pair and then wear your stays, because it is all gonna depend on the size of your boobies and how squishy your boobies are as to how stuffed you want these to be and where you want them, like how high up or low you want them to be in the stays. I ended up moving mine 3 times before I found a spot that was like, yeah, this is perfect. So this is just a trial and error thing. So just make a little set and try them out. I think they're worth it. They work really well. So these are done now. And I think they're so, so cute. There's a bit of rippling from sewing the lace down that I don't think I can fix now without like taking the lace off, which I'm not gonna do. So that's just there. All of that is finished and it's time to make a shirt. So the shirt I want to make is a piratey shirt. Has this whole video been a failed excuse to make an outfit so that I can dress like Elle Fanning in The Great? No comment. Now, have I made this shirt before? Yes, I have, in fact, made this shirt before, but it has its issues. I made this shirt like 5 years ago and I've never worn it. There was just something wrong with it, but I was newer to sewing and like fitting clothes to my body that I couldn't place it. Like I was just like, this is wrong and I don't know why. There's a couple things. The shoulders are uneven. The sleeves are not bad, but the underarm is way too short and it like pulls. And I hate when the underarm is too tight. It has become a pet peeve of mine. The neckline is too high. It needed to be brought down more, which is a simple fix. I definitely want to remake it because also it's a little on the smaller side, which to be fair, probably wasn't this small when I made it 5 years ago, but a little tighter now. So it's a shame because there's some really nice hand stitching in this shirt, but you know, I don't wear it, so not doing me any good hanging out in the closet. It also doesn't have neck gussets, which would go here between the shirt and the collar. And so it sits weird there too. I do have a recommendation for you for making one of these shirts. There's a content creator named Aura Lynn, and they have a tutorial on how to make one of these shirts. So I will link to her video below if you want to follow along with her making one because it's very good. I do recommend. I'm gonna go through some of the steps, but I'm not gonna go like, this isn't a tutorial. I'm getting hot. I have 2 weeks before I leave and I have 2 videos to edit and Marcel is still not done and I have a lot of work to do on her before the contest, which is in less than 2 weeks. So I'm starting to panic a little bit, just a little. So I'd really love to get this done so that I can check it off my list and work on something else. Let's go.
First thing we need to do is take some measurements. It's easier if you have a buddy, but I did this myself. The hardest part about this shirt for me was the neck gussets. They're really weird to sew in, and I did have to re-sew them all together or just parts of them like quite a few times. For the gathers, I used my machine and then carefully spaced them out with some tweezers and a lot of pins. I spent maybe too much time on this, but I think they look very neat. I used my machine to sew everything together, but I finished all the seams by turning and filling them down by hand.
Okay, I was able to construct this in an afternoon, except for all the seam finishing, which I'm gonna do by hand. And this fits so much better. So much better. The neck gussets make a huge difference. And then I lowered the armpit by quite a bit. And that also helps a lot. I'm excited. Couple things. If you're enjoying my video, maybe subscribe if you're not already. And also comment and like. Those help me out a bunch, you know. And also, after this video, please go over to Sophie's channel, Madame Myriad, and watch her Hobbit video. I haven't seen any sneak peeks yet. I've only seen the concept drawing and she's making a river hobbit. I'm very excited. Or if you've already checked it out and you're here because she told you to come my way, hi, welcome. I guess that's it. Oh, I'm so excited now. Let's go to the reveal. Do you ever like go to film the wrap up and you just like stand there and you're like, I had things to say. I don't know what they are now.
Literally every time.
That was super fun.
It was super fun.
I really hope we get to do that again.
It's waiting to move here.
Okay.
To stay.
I don't know. I kind of like Scotland more.
I mean, I'll move up to Scotland with you.
Okay. Deal.
Settle in the Highlands.
You heard that first. Is it weird talking to the camera with somebody else? Because this feels weird.
It does a bit. It feels like I'm both talking to you, but also not talking to you because I'm talking to them.
Yeah.
But also talking to you. And there's people downstairs. And it's like new territory.
Okay. My costume. I added bits last minute with the lace, and I'm happy I did. I think it's very cute. I love this shirt.
I love that shirt.
Right? It's amazing.
I forgot that you'd made your own shirt because it just looked like that's something that you bought.
The last city we were in, Manchester, there was a washer, and so we were washing our clothes, and we didn't realize it would take so long. And so my sleep clothes were in there, so I slept in this. I felt like it was like a rom-com from the 18th century. Just like, oh no, I have to sleep in your shirt, and there's only one bed. What are we gonna do?
Also from the cover of those really cheesy romance books.
Yes. Because it's quite long, too. It goes down to like here. Anyways, what else?
You learned how to make a daisy chain.
I did. I learned how to make a daisy chain. I'd never made one before, and now I know.
Can't believe you've gone your whole life with never making one before.
Yeah, Sophie seemed mad that I hadn't made one before.
Daisies in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Wait, you don't have daisies in Texas?
We got daisies, but there's no field like that around me. There's like bluebonnet fields everywhere like that, but...
Blue what?
Bluebonnets? It's the state flower. They're illegal to pick. So when I was a kid, I thought it was like you go to jail if you picked one. So I'd like pick one from my yard and be like, whoa. It's fine if they're in your own
So
yard.
no making bluebonnet necklaces in your videos.
They're kind of like, I don't know, I just have to show you a photo because they're not really like daisies. They're kind of this big thing. But, yeah. Anyways. I'm off to London.
Be better than Manchester, I promise you.
Oh my god, I hope it's better than Manchester. I'm sorry if anybody lives in Manchester, but it's just...
I mean, if anyone lives in Manchester, you know what we're talking about. So.
Okay, that's it. Bye. I can see this hair right here out of like the top of my eye, and it is bugging me a bit. Okay. Quit flying above my house. Sorry, I didn't finish that sentence. Oh, he's going so fast. Wow. So impressed.
Cheers.